I'm going to be sharing a look at Danu and her sisters, following rivers to the source, looking at river goddesses, river spirits in various parts of the world. And this was a talk I put together for the Association of Women in Mythology conference in March of 2020, which it turned out I wasn't able to attend after all. So I'm going to be sharing it instead with you. And the starting point here, of course, is the principle of water is life, the waters running over the land. Here's an old, maybe Akkadian goddess, I'm not sure, Sumerian, with the womb-like pot out of which the waters flow, and you can see fish here. So this really is like a river in this broken goddess statue from ancient times. And so even Indo-European cultures, you have this very strong pattern of water goddesses, and the root of Dan is sort of the focal point. We will find that there's other names for rivers than that, but may have actually meant river in the Proto-Indo-European language. And so here's an example of Gaulish fusion with Greco-Roman traditions, goddesses of springs, which are related, of course, the sources of rivers. I want to look, though, to begin with, at this root of Danu, Donau, Don, Danand, out of Proto-Indo-European. So before Irish and Sanskrit and all the languages in between split off from each other in very ancient times, they think that the root word of all these names meant river, waters, fluid. Sometimes they'll say drop. And so this reference to liquid. And so a lot of river names are derived from this root, and we're seeing some examples here. I'm going to go more in depth about the Danube, a lot of different names in the languages of all the countries it passes through. The Don and the Donets in Ukraine, which was known as Tanais, but written down in that form by the Greeks as a Scythian name for the river. Donwe, we'll see in a minute, from Wales, and Zvina, Daugava, Danu River in Nepal. There's a lot of different forms. Some of them can really diverge a lot from that core root. This is a little more, linguists are not really necessarily agreed on this, but it has been proposed that Dniester came from Scythian Danu Nazdya, the near river, or maybe even the lower river, and Dnieper from Danu Apara, the far river, because there's these two rivers that run sort of parallel to each other in the western Ukraine. And so the Danube, Danubius in Latin, and that's our oldest written form of it, of these European names for the river. Donau in German, Dunaj in most of the Slavic languages. You'll also see Dunav or Duna from Hungarian, Dunărea in Romanian. And even words that we would not recognize as having this root. For example, in Gaulish, the river that they speculate would have been called Rhodonos, the great river, Rodanu. That's where the Rhone gets its name from, running there through eastern France. And so all the way back, this is a core root that they see that Danu coming from, to run, to flow. So this old, I don't even want to begin to try to pronounce that reconstructed form. And so the Greeks also have this concept, and this name Rhea, she who flows, is from a verb, reo, meaning to flow. And she's one of the Titans. She is the daughter of the originating goddess Gaia, parthenogenic goddess, but also sometimes partnered with heavens. And from her, the daughter, from this pair come the daughter Rhea, and she later survives in Greek tradition and becomes the great mother of the Olympian deities. So that's a younger generation of deities, more patriarchal one too, but we're not going to go into all of that. And then Dunărea maybe incorporates that Greek Rhea. That just may be folk etymology, I don't know, but that Duna particle is still in there for the Danube. If we move over onto the far western edge of northwestern Europe, you have Don in the Mabinogion as a great mother figure. And so you will have the Welsh talking about a constellation which the Greeks call Cassiopeia, and they refer to it as the court of Don. She's kind of a shadowy figure. Not a great deal survives about her in the version that came down to us in written form. the books of the Mabinogion. But we see also in Welsh language river names, and so you have the Trydonwy and the Drifferdonwy rivers, so that this is a surviving term. Now, if we go to Ireland, Danan is a form that is linguistically related to these other names, and some people would also say that these forms without the D are related to it. And that's more speculative. There's a an root that means an ancestral mother in Proto-Indo-European, which also survives in Latin and other languages. But here's the piece that's interesting because this is from the Shanach Cormac, and this is one of our oldest Irish texts. In fact, probably the oldest, I'm not sure. But Anna, which is the mother of the gods of the Irish, it is well that she nursed the gods. And then later on, from whose name is said Anna, which is plenty. And the two pops of Anna, west of Luacher, are named. And so here's a picture of, in Irish, modern Irish, they call them Dachich Nanan, the two paps of Anu. They're mountains on the landscape, which represent this goddess. And so this text is mostly in Latin. So you'll see it referred to as Cormac's Glossary, another name for the same source. Anna mar dea indi anu, anand idest mater deorum. She is the mother of the gods. And so this is the primary form according to this text, and here's that an form. Anus would be the grandmother or old woman in Latin. There is some speculation that a linguistic shift could have changed Anna to Danan, but then there's so many other of these Danu words, that seems debatable, and a lot of the linguists don't think that's what happened anyway. But going back to India, Danu represents the primeval waters. And so in the Rig Veda, they don't talk about her a lot, but she's the mother of this snake spirit, Vritra, who is demonized. And here again we see liquid drops, so that Danu root that's related to the river names in Western Europe, and also much closer to India in the Iranian Avestan language. This is an old form of Iranian, where Danu also means river. So the Indian goddess, I have never found a representation of Danu. You'll hear people talk a lot about Danu, but this is off of a scriptural reference. And so here, Dewi Danu, this is from a Balinese temple. So the memory of that was there long enough for it to be transferred over to Indonesia, where the Balinese really picked up on it. So she's holding her water pot, and the woman with the water pot over her belly shows up in fountains in Bali, at Goa Gajah, for example. But going back to Europe, there's a bunch of other Dan names that have to do with women or goddesses associated with the waters. And so the Greeks have this origin story that says there were 50 daughters of Danaus, and he was king of Libya. And his brother, Aegyptos, which is Egypt, forced the daughters to marry his 50 sons. And so the Danaides were rebellious. They didn't want to be forced into marriages, and they killed their husbands on their wedding nights, all except for one, who the Greeks celebrate as the virtuous woman. And the others are, of course, all bad and have to be punished, and they're supposed to be carrying water for all eternity. And by some accounts, I think in sieves, but the water carrier theme survives there in that rather negative depiction of this sisterhood. Another story, you also see the Dan root associated with the waters, and this is Danaë. And so she's in her chamber, she's a virgin, daughter of a king, I think. And Zeus sprinkles sperm into her, and she conceives Perseus. And so this is a big scandal because she's unmarried and she's become pregnant. And so her father casts her off in a chest into the sea, and she's supposed to die with her baby. And she survives, but then her son becomes the slayer of Medusa. So there's all these twists and turns where female powers are turned against, most notably in the figure of Athena, turned against female power and siding with the patriarchal order. And that's a whole other story. I'll talk about that in my book, which will be coming out later in 2020, Pythias, Melissae, and Pharmakides, where I'll look at some of these myths of conquest and colonization of the female. But as I was saying, there are other goddesses who are associated with rivers. And in the Gaulish world, this British world too, this is very common. And so the Seine River takes its name. It's actually a contraction of Sequana, which is a name of a goddess who had a temple at the headwaters of the Seine River. There was springs there. And so this is the origin point of the river. And so bronze statues like this one, maybe this is silver, I'm not really sure, of her spinning, and she's riding in a boat with a duck that has a berry in its bill. And so this is Sequana. Here's a frontal view of the same statue. You can see the spinning action here a little more strongly. And so these headwaters were places that people came to pray and leave offerings, and a lot of them are placed into the water for archaeologists later to fish out. And a lot of these were engraved plates, maybe on lead or some other metal. And so you see the eye motif showing up a lot here. And these were prayers and appeals for healing. A lot of times springs, not just in Western Europe, but it was very common in the tribal European period for people to cast offerings into the waters, and sometimes even images of the part of their body that needed healing. There's many examples of that, lakes too. So this is very modern. In fact, I think it's from Versailles, but it's the Marne River. And so this is the modern name for it, but it originates from the Latin word matrona, which means a great mother. And so there's a lot of forms like this, and you'll see this matron word also appearing in Greek inscriptions. This is from Provence, I think. If we go up into Britain, linguists think that the Wharfe River was originally Werbea. This is a Latinized form of the goddess of that river, who is shown, either she or one of her priestesses here, with a serpent in either hand. The serpent and the water association is global. You see it constantly. So this is in line with that. And looking at this, you can kind of see how w became hu, and it's very common for a B to turn into a P or an F. Just phonologically, this is a common sound shift. So this is from northern England. And another one along the same lines of the dancer with serpents in her hands is from eastern France at Mavilly. This is a Gaulish image. And so dancing amidst greenery, there could be a water association going on here too, which the serpents might point to. And possibly this is a torch, a flaming torch that she's holding in her other hand. And then there is Sirona, Virona, Zirona. There are various forms of this name, and she's not so much a river goddess, but I'm throwing her in here because she's a fascinating figure, especially this inscription in Latin, which reads Dei Dirone, to goddess Dirone, Maior Magia. This is a eponym of Isis, great in magic, Weret Heko in the original Kemetic language. And then the dedicant has put in here his name, and this is a formula, in joyous fulfillment of a vow. So this is his thank you to the goddess for his wish being granted. What you'll see happen a lot in Europe, this is in the period around 1st, 2nd, 3rd century of our era, is you'll see the native goddess Sirona, who's looking very Greek here, paired with a Roman or a Greek god. And so she still has the serpent in her hand. Again, that water snake thing comes together. She's associated with thermal springs that were healing shrines. And this is how Apollo comes to be associated with her, because he's famous actually in Greek legend of taking over shrines of springs and streams that were originally sacred to goddesses. And the most famous of that would be Delphi. And so he takes it over from Ge, from the Earth Mother. And so he's associated with these springs and also with healing. So this is a syncretism where they're combining different cultural streams. Here's more from, this is Sirona, and this is in West Germany. Two views of the same statue. They look quite different, but it really is the same statue. And so she also takes on attributes of the Roman goddess Bonadea, with the snakes coiled around her arm, the good goddess of the Romans. She was the queen of the women's mysteries and all women's ceremonies that men were forbidden to attend. And she's pointing, according to my sources, this is a bowl of eggs. It's a little easier to see it over here. And she had a temple at Hochside, if I can get this to Sirona's well. So the shrine is built around the well. It's just a small little enclosure here. You can see the very Greco-Roman pillars and everything there. But people would have been coming to this shrine before the Roman conquests. An older Gaulish or perhaps Germanic shrine. Now we're moving over to Iran. And this is from some of the old texts, the Avestan texts, that speak of Ardvisura Anahita, which means the lofty, mighty, immaculate one. And so she's a goddess. There's several reliefs of her that are intended to show her conferring sovereignty on the king. So she's got this kind of garland that she's about to hand off to him. But I want to focus on her and not on the political machinations to be authorized by her as the Lord of all by the kings. So the scripture here, this one piece, life increasing and holy, herd increasing and holy, strong and bright, tall and beautiful of form, who sends down by day and by night a flow of motherly waters, as large as all the waters that run along the earth, and who runs powerfully. And another verse, as great in bigness as all these waters which flow upon the earth. So this is again another root word, Anahita. And while we're on the subject of Iran, I'm going to just slide over here to the Amesha Spenta, which the Zend Avesta names as the divine attributes. And so this photo is not necessarily connected to them, although it could be. And so there are three forms. Aramaiti, which means serenity, refers to the earth, the stillness and the bliss and the harmony of the earth, the life-giving power, the healing power of the earth. Spenta Armaiti. Ameritat, immortality. I love these paintings. Hannah Shapiro is great. And so here she's shown among flowering palm trees and other kinds of plants. The nectar out of the fruiting and flowering trees being symbolic of immortality. And Haraxvat, the bounteous immortal. And here she is shown as a goddess of the waters. We saw that also in the image of earth that preceded this. But that emptying of waters from the pot, which we saw earlier from ancient Iraq. And so this name, Haraxvat, refers to, there was actually an Avestan river name, Haraxvati or Haraxvaiti. They're kind of variations on the pronunciation. They may not quite be sure exactly how it was said. But this is a name that later becomes the Helmand River in southern Afghanistan. And so this region between the borders of Afghanistan going into Pakistan, ancient India, is really interesting because there is a directly related term from Avestan, Haraxvaiti, or Haraxvati. We have Indian Sarasvati, so you can see the sound shift between h to s. And so this is a legendary river referred to in the Vedas, in the Puranas, talking about this river, which gradually this goddess kind of consolidates into the goddess of wisdom. But originally she's a river goddess. And this river is thought to have sunk into the sands. The Thar Desert is there where that river must have once run. And so there's references to Sarasvati in the Rig Veda. And this first line here, which is, you can see it in the Sanskrit, but O Mother Saraswati, you are the greatest of mothers, greatest of rivers, greatest of goddesses. Just briefly going over to China, I'm looking for more on this. They don't really seem to have much reference to water gods or water goddesses from what I've found so far. But this is actually Nyingwa, which is a sort of a creation story after the Great Flood. So you see the waters pouring here, but they're referring actually to a flood that covers the whole earth when the heavens and earth. There's a break that happens, and so she repairs the sky and causes the deluge to end. So just throwing her in there parenthetically. But there's a goddess that's known as Luo Shen, and the river spirit of the Luo, or the spirit of the Luo River. And so here's a really beautiful painting of her. And there's a lot of literature. There are a lot of poems praising the glories of the Luo River woman. And you'll see paintings like this where she's floating along. She can sometimes be sighted by poets and mystics as they walk along the river. And there are, in this period when this painting was done, this is medieval already, you'll see the poets imagining her becoming the consort of the emperor. So there's really a subordination of her in the imaginations of these male poets. Yet there is a reflection of something that would have been older and indigenous, the idea that these waters are a female spirit. She becomes kind of a fairy being in the poems. And so if we move to Africa, down in the southeastern area of the country of Malawi is actually named for the Pool of Malawi. So this is not a river, but it's a lake. And there's a history of priestesses, a whole succession of oracular women who preside over this pool, which is inhabited by the rain python. And so the sacred rattle, you see her calling the rain here, the ebony staff, the spiral amulet, the Ndoro, as it's called in some parts of this region. And the sacred pool also shows up in West Africa, in Gabon, among the Fang people. And their Bwiti religion has this reference to humans being created when moonlight, the essence of the moon, shines on these still pools deep in the forest. And so the moon and the pool both are forms of Nyingwan Mebege, and one of my sources calls this the female principle of the universe and goddess of the night. And so she's the giver of life and the protector of life. And her counterpart is Mebege. This is her brother, who is the sun. So this is that kind of pairing. You see a lot of times these pairing of deities in this way in Africa and other places. But I want to go a little further north and turn to the Yoruba people of Nigeria and Benin Republic. And this is a fan belonging to Oshun, who is one of the river goddesses. We'll start with her. And so this fan ceremonially was often, according to what Louisa Tish has told me, is used to clear negative energy. So it will be waved around to purify the room, to ward off dangerous energies. Ritual implement there that is specifically associated with Oshun. And here she is in her older form, the traditional carvings of Oshun that you see. Here's one, more recent probably, standing in the Oshun River. So she is. There's actually a river named after her. And this looks like pretty high waters because the statue is up to her hips there in the river water. So I'm going to be showing you some modern re-envisionments. Oshun is a beloved Orisha, not only in Africa itself, but also in the diaspora, particularly in Brazil and the Caribbean diaspora. Oshun is like a healer, and I'm going to read to you a bit from one of the Oriki, the praise songs of Oshun, in this mode. We call her, and she replies with wisdom. She can cure those who the doctor has failed. She cures the sick with cold water. When she cures the child, she does not charge the father. We can remain in the world without fear. My mother, you are beautiful, very beautiful. Your eyes sparkle like brass. Your skin is soft and smooth. You are black like velvet. Everybody greets you when you descend on the world. Everybody sings your praises. And so these paintings often show Oshun with the flowing waters. She's a goddess of beauty and love. Her color is yellow or orange. And you see her here with the mirror, one of the attributes along with the fan that are associated with her. And so you will also see in the living religion devotees being entered by the spirit of Oshun, as you see here with the beaded veil and wearing her regalia. So during a ceremony, here she's actually at the river. I take this to be Nigeria, but you will have the spirit enter, the goddess enter the body of the devotee, and then who will then be robed in the regalia of that Orisha. Another river goddess, and this is the elder of a group of three of them, is Yemaya. And so this word Nyemonja is contracted from that. Iya, mother, Omo, child, and Eja, fish. So the mother of fish children. And here again, the old style sculpture of her, with the cheek markings, the cheek tattoos, and this is from Nigeria itself. And she too spreads very widely and kind of becomes an ocean goddess in the diaspora, particularly in Brazil, very strongly. So Yemaya as an ocean mother is now in the world, and there's another aspect though to the ocean, which is the deep waters, and that is Olokun, who you will see referred to as a god, but there is again this co-gendered quality to many of the orishas, and that's the case with Olokun also. So blue and white are the colors of Yemaya. She's also associated with the moon. She is called Mother of the Orishas. And so these are all obviously modern paintings. You see her as a sea serpent or a sirena, part fish woman. And so that reverence of Oshun becomes international. And you'll see also the Orisa being celebrated in Peru and Colombia and other parts of the African diaspora. And so this huge outpouring of beautiful art re-envisioning these African powers. Here Oshun at the shore, at the lip of the waters. And this one showing the two sisters, Oshun and Yemaya, meeting at the shore. And so there are holidays on New Year's in Rio and other parts of coastal Brazil. People will go down to the sea and wade into the water, send out offerings to Yemaya or Yemonja. Then the third sister is Oya, and this is the name for the Niger River in Yoruba, Odo Oya. I mean, Niger means black in Latin, so colonial name. But another name of Oya is Yansa. Yansan means mother of nine in the Yoruba language, and this refers to the 9 tributaries of the Niger River. And just in passing here, it originates way up in the mountains here in Guinea, and it runs, the longest course of the Niger is this triangular portion going through Mali and then into Nigeria. And this is Yoruba country right here. So Oya is more famous. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that she has this river goddess attribute to her, and think about her much more in her mode as this fierce goddess of change, of storms, of transformation, a defender, lightning power that is, and you'll see her with red, maroon, or purple. Here's another kind of traditional altar of Oya, wrapped around by the horns of the bush cow. This is the female water buffalo, which is one of her aspects and attributes. Over here, this is a modern sculpture from Rio showing Yansa, so again, the mother of the 9. This is a name through which she becomes very popularly known in the Americas, although it originates in West Africa. There again, the mysterious beaded veil that you see in the ceremonies. And so one of the ways that these 3 sisters of the rivers are referred to is as the daughters of Gelefun, a word that's made up of sit, white, earth. And the idea is that the 3 of them sit on the cooling power of the earth. And so Yemaya is the oldest, Oya in the middle, I guess, and Oshun the youngest, modern picture there. Chalchiutlicue, which means Jade Her Skirt, reference to the sweet waters that pour forth from this Aztec goddess. And so you often see her walking in the waters or else having them flow out from her. So here they're coming out from beneath her, and you have shells and other things connected to them. And so here she's being shown with the grandmother, Tosi, our grandmother, in a post-conquest codex. Goddesses of the Mexicans, it says. And so she's like a river of life. So the water is all around her. It flows out from her, and you can see beings floating in this river of the essence of life. She's also shown as a spinner, which is really common for Mexican goddesses. And this river that comes out of her, or that is her, she's endowing destiny. The way she's holding her hand out, the person who's in that river of life, each person receives a destiny from her. These are statues of her. There's a lot of stone statues of Chalchiutlicue. And so Kwe means skirt. And so the sweet waters, the jade waters skirt, which you see these patterns of flow that are beautifully carved onto her skirt in this picture. She's also wearing in this one of the folded paper headdresses that you see a lot throughout Mexico. Here it is again. And so some of these statues have been rubbed with red ochre, or perhaps cinnabar in some cases, liquid mercury. To the redness, the idea of vitality is also inherent in her. Turning to Colombia, this is a really interesting place. There's a stream, and Quebrada Lavapatas actually means the waterfall where you wash your paws or wash your feet. And so this is a natural formation that has been carved with channels so that you have the shapes of what looks like a parrot here, or maybe a macaw. And there's a pool here in the background. And so I have a couple shots of this, but I'm going to look at, there's two figures flanking either side. There's an ancestral mask here, and the figures are flanked by monkeys. Let's try and see if we can get a better look. So here you can't see one of the figures that's covered by water at this time of year, but here's one, and she's got two animals perhaps crouching at her shoulders. She's holding them up, and there's a spiral-tailed monkey on the side. And I'm saying she because looking at this figure, this would be something that a lot of times would be assumed to be a male figure, just off the top, with the feather headdress and no appreciable breasts. But when we look closely at the kilt, you'll see a vulva incised on here. So this is intended to be a female spirit. And so there are two of these pools. Here's another view. This is a different pool. Can't really make out what's here in the background, but you can see the channels again where the water that naturally flows over these rocks has been carved out channels for it to flow in certain patterns. And some of these are in the form of animals. You've got spirals, and also here in the foreground, the spirals and also serpents, coiled serpents appear. Here's another view of the snakes. So who knows how old this is, how far back it goes, who were the people, I don't know, who were the people that carved this. And then if we go over to Peru, in the south of Peru, you have Huanca refers to a sacred stone, and the Chacana refers to the Andean cross, this particular stepped form. And this would be part of an Andean cross, not the whole thing. But you've got the water channeled to flow over it into this pool. And so the Quechua and other Peruvians did have reverence for the waters, and this is a book that was put together by a man who was from the Inca aristocracy, and also married into the Spanish colonist world. So writing books in Spanish in the 1600s to try and preserve and authenticate some of the culture. So you have men over here on this cliff playing music, and the water spirit women are listening to the song. This is very parallel in some ways to something that is called the Blessing of the Fountains. And this is, I'm not really sure where this is from, but this is in the 800s. And so you've got the idea of the fountains coming out of the mouths of these goddesses into the pools. And this also turns up when the Irish missionary, maybe in the 5th century, I'm not sure exactly the date, is traveling to Switzerland. There are cascades at the town that is now called after him, St. Gallen, that there's 7 cascades that were believed to be associated with goddesses of the stream. And this painting is much later than his time, maybe 1300s, 1400s, but you can see the goddesses imagined as naked women with the feet of deer. So they're being imagined as fairy goddesses, and there is this continuity of the fairy women with older divinities that are now outlawed by the new Christian regime. If we want to back up just a little bit, this is in West Germany at Landstuhl, where there's a sacred spring, and they carved reliefs into the rock walls there. So you've got the outlines of the Matronae, the great mothers. Here is a goddess with the basket in her lap. This is a very common theme in German sculpture after the Roman entry into that part of the world. And you have a direct picture here, reproduction, I should say, a relief in the form of the 3 Matronae. And there are just many, many examples of stone altars, stelae, that were dedicated in honor of the Matronae in Germany, particularly in the West. So there's a lot more that I didn't really set out to do an entire show on river goddesses. This is just what came together for my original intent to talk about Danu. But this slide really stands up for all of the many examples not being covered here, because there's so much we still don't know in parts of the world that get very little examination. And so Catalimi is the mother of the Ob River in the Kant tradition of Western Siberia. And maybe she would have looked something like this. I don't know anything about the meaning of this pillar, but this is the Lyapin River. And so you've got a sacred pillar being set up in recognition of that. So that's what I have for you now, and you are invited, of course, to visit the Suppressed Histories website. There are a lot of links, articles, photo essays on there. I'm in the process of bringing videos through, and this is going to be one of them. If you like these kinds of visual talks, and I think that teaching with images is very effective, it gives you much more direct contact with the melody of the culture, its flavor, than strictly reading things will do. I teach an online course that's pretty much ongoing, but this is the sign-up link that you can actually subscribe month to month. And so you can try it out. If you like it, you can stay. It's $31 a month for a single month. If you subscribe for 3 months or more, it goes down to $25. And so we have readings, I post images and short photo essays, sometimes links to videos and other sites, links to articles. We talk about not only the goddess traditions, but wise women, healers, prophetic women, a whole lot of different subjects, women's history generally. And so that's a resource that's ongoing and available, and the webcasts that I do every month are automatically included. They're actually, I started doing them for the course. If that doesn't appeal to you and you appreciated this work, you can also donate monthly through Patreon. I think the minimum donation is $3 a month. You can pay $5, $10, $25. There's a variety of tiers. And I put content on there that is not necessarily shared in other settings. I'm going to be using this to deliver advanced readings from my book, Pythias, Melissae, and Pharmakides, which will be out later this year. And so, you just, I don't like the word Patreon, Matronae. You can become one of my Matronae, my great mothers. And always possible, you can look on the Suppressed History site down the left side. There's a donation button there as well if you would like to see more of this work and help me get it out there. So I appreciate any support like that you have, and you can also, open source content is very, very voluminous at the Suppress Histories page on Facebook, particularly if you look in the photos section. You can just scroll down there till you see what catches your eye. And there are about 10,000 pages of photo essays that I've put on there over the last 10 years. And also, of course, the Suppress Histories site. So, thank you. I let people know also. There'll be more coming along soon.